have also turned the captions on, and this is something I haven't used before, so we'll see how it goes, and also the transcribing, and I did just explain that will record, so there will be a written transcription at the end of this. And if you can't find it on the Teams, if you email me via the skills at West of England Combined Authority email, which will be on all of these slides and on the website, then I can get that to you. So without further ado, I hope I am sharing my screen with everybody here. And we will move on to the presentation. So a little bit of housekeeping. I've been through some of this already. If we keep microphones and videos off, we are recording, and that is so that we can make this available to other stakeholders who couldn't attend. I do want you to pose questions in the chat. I have to say I'm running this event by myself this afternoon, so with recording and presenting. I probably am not going to be able to answer questions in this session. There's also a very good reason why in an open and fair competitive process we would want to make sure that the answers to those questions were widely available. So I will be putting those on an FAQ document that will be updated regularly alongside the application documents for this fund on the CSF website, which I'll explain more about later. But do post those questions and I will get back to you in the FAQ. If you are looking for partnerships as part of this fund, you can use the chat function today. If you know exactly what you're looking for and you want to make your details available in this wide forum, that's absolutely fine with me if people are chatting away and using this as an opportunity. However, there is another event next Monday at the same time, this time next Monday afternoon, 1st of November, that is an open facility for anybody who wants to come and do a 3-minute soapbox or just to listen to those soapbox sessions. And they're very much about just being able to explain what partners you might be looking for, exactly what you're delivering, looking to deliver as part of this application, etc. So the link is on these slides. What I will do, again, not very good at multitasking and putting all the links into the chat, and I am on my own this afternoon doing this event, but I will put them in the chat after, and they are on the Community Support Fund website as well. So the objectives of our market engagement event today are to share some details about what the programme as a whole aims to achieve, where to gather evidence and data specifically to support applications, and we're going to share, of course, the details around Core 1, so that will include things like the timeline, it'll include things like the process and the documentation required, what types of projects exactly we're looking for and what we're looking in high scoring applications, tips for completing application forms, and again we'll talk about, so if you've got any questions relating to anything to do with the application process, where to pose those and where you'll find the answers to them. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the programme overall. So it's £1.5 million as part of the West of England Combined Authority's wider recovery fund. Please don't get confused with some of the other similarly named programmes. This is not the UK Community Renewal Fund or UK CRF. So it is around WECA's recovery funding specifically. At the heart of this programme, it's an employment and skills initiative aimed at supporting those in our communities who have been most disproportionately affected by COVID. And it's about supporting those individuals to make progress towards existing employment and skills initiatives, including volunteering. Applicants will really need to show need of how the groups they're targeting have been disproportionately affected by COVID, and we'll go through some hints and tips around what we're looking for around that evidence. And we're looking for activity which will improve specific themes around social value. So we're really looking to improve strengthen communities and social cohesion. We're looking at activity to improve health and well-being, activity that improves financial inclusion and resilience, and activity around increased pride of place and environmental awareness. So it's through those activities that we want to then see the further signposting to employment and skills initiatives, and which can include volunteering. Funding will be awarded to voluntary and community non-for-profit sector groups. And partnerships to this will be vital, and that will become probably obvious in some of the more detail about what we're looking for and around some of those progression targets, and why formally and informally some of those partnerships and collaborations are likely to be vital for successful applications. We're looking to measure positive economic outcomes as a result of this programme, and we are using some of the hacked social value measures as part of monitoring and evaluation. And we don't want that to put anybody off if you've not used them before. They are quite new to me as the programme manager, and we're very much just taking what we like about those measures, and we'll very much be supporting and working with you along that monitoring and evaluation of those. We'll also be trialling something called digital badging as a way to recognise engagement and skills developed for those participants. So digital badging is used in other areas across the country. For us, we want to use it as a way to support participants to recognise maybe some of the skills and attributes they've learned as part of this activity, and also so they've recorded their engagement in that activity, so that is then currency, if you like, towards their next step in that skills and employment progression. Okay. Objectives and benefits of the programme. So I wouldn't worry about this one too much, because if you're not aware of hacked social value measures, this objective, just so you know, this first one might not make too much sense. But there are ways that if you're measuring hacked social value measures, you can really see if there's been a definite outcome for a participant in that area of social value. And we'll be looking for participants to positively select, and that is through surveys. At the end of their participation in any activity, we hope that 70% of those individuals will report some positive feedback. But there's some more instructions in terms of how to do that. We want to improve pathways to employment for 1,000 residents in our area through this project and programme, and they fall under 4 key objectives. I already read those in the first slide around the strengthening community and social cohesion, improving health and well-being, improving financial inclusion and resilience, and that pride of place and environmental awareness. But we've put some numbers there, so I think just the key point there is make sure as a programme, us managing the whole programme, we're very much looking at activity that covers a variety of those different areas, and we've set ourselves some targets for the numbers of participants we'd like to see taking part in those. So you can see we want to build a well-rounded programme. We are looking for 100% of those participants to be directed towards some sort of form of employability, skills training, education, and that can include volunteering opportunities. So again, that's partly where some of that partnership comes in, because you will need to provide evidence of how you're going to show that those 100% of participants have been signposted to further support. And we do expect 65 of those individuals to progress on and take their next step towards employability, skills training, or education, and that includes volunteering. We are quite innovative and open about how our applicants, what they class as that next step in terms of employability and skills training. I can give some specific examples later on of things that we've thought about. But there to support you to do that, we know that is an ambitious target, like 65%. But that's why we are putting in place that digital badging to recognise that achievement. And we also have funding approval for a hub and spoke model for this delivery. So there's a couple of roles that have been approved, one a regional outreach support officer, one a monitoring officer, to be out supporting successful applicants, and also applicants in the future call. We're looking at a future call in spring to really support them in terms of that monitoring, initiation, anything about working and being a partner with the West of England Combined Authority. The next slide is just to really show where the Community Support Fund fits on steps of engagement in terms of employability and skills training. I've just noticed an error here because I haven't put in my new name of Community Support Fund. It's still recovery here. But just to be clear, this programme sits right at this grassroots aspect. So it's interventions supporting community resilience and cohesion. So it's very much residents who are most vulnerable in our community, most disproportionately affected by COVID, furthest from the workforce or from skills and training initiatives. And it's very much about that pre-engagement to support those potential progression routes onto more mainstream employability skills and volunteering initiatives. Okay, just to show you again and make clear that hub and spoke model. So we've put that in place for several different reasons around that community support outreach officer and the monitoring officer, really to make sure there's that support out on the ground in localities, supporting community and voluntary sectors who have been successful in this programme to support their partnership building and support wider links, collaborations and wider promotion of future calls. So the one we're expecting in April. This slide is just to talk about a little bit of the engagement we've been doing. This fund, if you know about it, has been slightly delayed, so we've had time to speak to quite a few people in the sector, pick their brains about kind of how we make sure this lands in the right way, to very much support applicants the best way we can in the ways that we is in our gift to change and to support. So I just wanted to show you that this is some of the conversations we've been having over the last kind of almost a year, really, in terms of really thinking about how we maximise the outcomes of this project, how we land this right with you as the voluntary and community sector, how we build the right partnerships and support successful programmes to make the right partnerships really maximise those programme outcomes. Key to this, none of these activities will be standalone. You'll probably see around some of those outcomes for signposting and progression that they'll very much need to make partnerships and links with the existing employment and skills initiative to build that capacity. So this slide just shows you some examples in terms of what some of those programmes might be. So I'll just pick out a few. So for example, existing adult education budget funded provision. If you've got people who are in work, especially in low paid roles, linked to Future Bright mentors to help them to progress. Other recovery fund projects such as digital and cultural initiatives that these participants might feed into.
It's off, isn't it? Yeah. No, it's on.
Talent retention platform and those sorts of things. Sorry, just to say, if you've got your microphone on or videos, do just turn them off. That would be helpful. Okay, so I'm now going to kind of progress on in the presentation, just talk a little bit around providing evidence of local need. So I just wanted to make sure that any potential applicants through this market engagement event had heard from us in terms of some of the sources that we think that applicants could get data and evidence from, what we look for in applications in terms of good examples of evidence, and just to give you some ideas really of where you might be able to make a really strong justification for the groups that you're looking to target and your understanding of your local needs. So we just had a little bit of a brainstorm in the office and thought about some of the places where you might collect some of this intelligence. So there is some in the specification guidance documents. I'll talk more about where they are, but they should be on the website now or slightly later on today if they haven't been uploaded already. But the specification guidance, I cannot stress more how much it's worth you having a really, really good read of that and keeping that every time you're writing the application as your guide. We have put quite a bit of intelligence in there that supported us in making our full business case. Also kind of recent reports and recent piece of data that have come out that we've come across that we think might help applicants. It also outlines in there as well links to our website, and I'm going to go through some of those examples in a minute of where you can use some of our further intelligence, specifically a guide to multiple indices of deprivation. So there's that we really urge you to use. We would say use your local anchor organisations. and networks as well that you have in your local area. We want to make sure these activities are supporting very local needs and local initiatives. So I would really urge you to see what you can find from some of your partners there. Your own delivery data, because you will be experts in the area of delivering this kind of activity. So it's likely you have previous project learning and previous data that you can feed into this programme. And think about using qualitative as well as quantitative data as well. So I've got an example for you around some work that I did on the Digital Skills Improvement Programme here, just to kind of show you how simple and easy it can be around an application process. But I'll talk about that more in a moment. And yeah, I would just urge you again to use some of those wider combined authority data sources that are available to you. So I'll talk a little bit about what some of those are, and this is where I'm just going to go off the PowerPoint for a moment and hopefully still share my screen and be showing you some examples. So there's a link here, but actually the easiest thing to do is to type into Google or go on the West of England Combined Authority website and find our regional insights pages. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like now. So you will be able to see here, this is our regional insights page, and there's quite a lot of data here, depending on the type of program that you want to run, that could back up and really provide you with some excellent statistics, some excellent understanding around some of where those areas of needs are. So it's split down into economic overview and strategic evidence, labour market employment and skills, and business innovation. And it's in here that you will find a really helpful pack around this indices of multiple deprivation. So there's a guide here. I've already clicked on that. Oh, that's the wrong page. And that's here. And I think this will really support most applications if you have a good dig around what some of this data can do for you. So if you haven't come across indices of multiple deprivation, it is an official measure of deprivation in England, and it provides real data down to neighbourhood level, or what it calls neighbourhood level is lower layer super output areas. You can look at indices of deprivation as a whole, as a measure, but you can also break it down into distinct domains. So you can look at specific deprivation data around things like income, employment, education, skills and training, crime, barriers to social housing, health, local environment. So you can see really related to some of the social value themes that we are looking to address through this activity. The latest data is 2019, so it does not reflect the impact of COVID so far, but it's still a really useful measure, especially as deprivation is seen as, you know, something that is a long-term impact on communities, and therefore we expect that still to be very much relevant in our neighbourhoods. And this guide also talks you through how to explore that data. So both using things like maps, interactive tools, and they are explained in the following section. So I'm not going to go through it all, but I just wanted to show you a little example of Bristol here. So you'll be able to see that this is the English Indices of Deprivation for Bristol, just as an example. And what's really nice about this is it will provide you a little explanation of what that means. And of course, if you're on the interactive tool, what you can then do is dig down into local neighbourhoods where you can find out more and have a look at those LSOA data. So you can imagine if you were looking to completely design a programme from scratch, for example, you could use this tool as a way to support you understand some of the areas that you might want to target across the West of England region. It might also support you if you've got an existing idea in adding that data and some of those statistics to the type of activity that you want to find. And I was just going to show you, without going into too much detail, this is the interactive tool. There's a link to it on the guide. And I've just brought up the example of Hartcliffe and Withywood in Bristol. And what you've got here is you can look at the data, and it will explain to you. I know it's probably far too small on your screens, but some of the analysis of the index of multiple deprivation of that area as a whole, or you can look specifically into some of those areas. So let's go, for example, into looking at health deprivation and disability. So this is around measures the risk of premature death and the impact of quality of life through poor physical and mental health. So you can click on there and it will give you some more information. So I think this is a really great tool that I'd like to be seeing applicants use, at least to pull off some of that data in their applications. So I will go back to our PowerPoint. Okay. So that's how I just wanted to show you that tool and some of the data you'll find on there. Just thinking about then how you could add to that. So we spoke about some of the examples of evidence being not just the quantitative, but some of the qualitative data. And I just wanted to show you, not to confuse you, but this slide is an example of some evidence that I pulled together around digital skills intelligence. So it's just an example of a 1 hour virtual meeting, might have been 2, back in July, where I pulled together some experts around digital skills, and quite quickly what we managed to establish as a group is some kind of key findings and themes. Now this is around digital skills, so something quite different, but I think there's 7 or 8 different points there that were collected in kind of an hour, and you can imagine how powerful that type of evidence would be if you added some data and some statistics to that in terms of backing it up. So again, I just wanted to give you some examples of things that we've done and things we might like to see in high scoring applications. Okay, so I'll go into some of the details now around Core 1 and what we're looking for specifically around the Community Support Fund. So firstly, the process, and I've gone through this in a couple of different ways, just because I don't want people to get confused and people might understand it if I go through just in several different slides really. So this first one, we have split down the application process into 2 stages. So stage 1, which is our expression of interest phase, and then stage 2, which is our full project application process. And the rationale behind doing that is because we are expecting quite high numbers of applications. We know there have been very oversubscribed similar funds locally and nationally quite recently, so I think there's probably quite a few existing business cases and ideas that are almost kind of ready to go that could really suit this fund, and we know there's a huge need, so we are expecting a high level of applications. So we've introduced an expression of interest form. We are a very small team to try and support us just with the scale of what we are expecting, but of course we never know. But what we've tried to do there is make it really simple for applicants in terms of there's 6 questions in the full application, and the expression of interest is literally the first 2. So if you're successful into stage 2, you can adapt what you've put into question 1 and 2, but actually you've already done a good chunk of your application form. So key requirements for this initial stage, for this expression of interest stage, is there's an application form, and we want you to complete initial eligibility, which is a tick list of things that you need to look through, statements to check that you can meet, things you've read, obligations you're happy to sign up to. So that's a tick box, and that's a pass or fail. And then there is question 1, quality question 2 that you need to complete, and they will be scored. So they'll be scored by an evaluation panel. They score between 1 and 5, and anything that scores 2 or below will be a fail. Anything that is 3 or above will be a pass, and those ones that are 3 or above will get through. There's a lot more information in the specification guidance just to make sure you're clear, and I'll probably keep coming back to that. Please do not use this session instead of reading those documents. Feedback, so we are expecting that high level of interest. So just to be clear, for unsuccessful applicants, it's unlikely at this stage that we'll be able to offer feedback. But for successful stage 1 applicants, we'll probably just offer some high level comments that the evaluation panel have made. And if that means you want to go into stage 2 and just amend anything you've put in question 1 and 2 to confirm or clarify any of those comments, then you'll be very welcome to. At stage 2, that is then the full project application. So requirements at that stage is to complete that application form. So question 3 to 6, you'll have already done 1 and 2, but you can go back and amend those if you want to. There's a due diligence process in Appendix B, and there's a final a financial annex, Appendix C. We'll also need a letter from your financial officer. Please, if you get to stage 2, and we will remind you, do not forget your letter from your financial officer. Again, they will be scored by a valuation panel. Recommendations for funding then need to go through our governance processes. Ultimately, that goes to CEOs, and a due diligence check will be completed. Then all applicants at this stage will be notified of funding decisions, and we're looking for that process to take place towards the end of February 2022. There's a very detailed timeline in the specification guidance for you. Just to be aware, there are slightly different application forms for different grant sizes, and I'll explain what those grants are on the next page, what those grant sizes are. And this is really from listening to you as a sector and trying to understand some of the challenges that you face. We can't take away all of our monitoring and guidance and all of the things that we require from you because it is government funding, but we've tried to amend the process as much as we can to support those particular smaller organisations. Okay, so the application process, this is pretty much saying the same thing, it's just in a different way in case I've confused anybody. So we are making available different grant sizes as part of this first call. So there are small grants, very small, between £1,000 and £9,999. Medium grants between that 10 and that 49,999,000, and then large grants between 50,000 and 100,000. We are expecting those large grants, they are probably multi-boundary. We would expect them to address probably several areas of that social value, those social value themes, and there's more detail of that in the specification guidance. And then I've just outlined here what is slightly different between those medium and large application process and the small grant applications process. So there is a slightly different application form for the medium and large grants, so just make sure you're completing the right one. It's written right on top and it's written in the title of the application form. There is Appendix D, which is a due diligence response. Again, they are slightly different for those large and medium, and again that's from listening to you and really thinking about the size of grants we need and what we need to carry out in terms of due diligence on your organisation. Appendix C is exactly the same, whether you're a medium or large grant applicant, and so is the letter to the finance officer. And there are 2 stages of those application. Stage 1, which is that expression of interest, which is the eligibility criteria and question 1 and question 2. And then there is that second stage, which is that full project application.
There's not really a fundamental difference between.
Okay. Ooh. I'll just move on to the next slide. I've lost my cursor. There we go. And I've lost your my screen, so I'll come back. So this slide just shows some of the weighting. I've pulled this directly out of the application guidance form. Question 1 to 5 are scored between 1 to 5, and there is the criteria in terms of what 1 to 5 mean, and the statements for those in the application paperwork. And question 6 is the only one that's slightly different, and that is scored between 1 and 4, and again the explanation for those are in there. The weightings for those different questions are here. Just be aware, question 1 and 2 is that expression of interest phase. So at expression of interest, we don't need to complete all the questions, just question 1 and 2. And then the second stage is 3 to 6, including our social value question. Social value is only compulsory for large grants. However, there's still 5% available for medium and small grant applications. So you will score lower and you can lose that maximum 5% if you don't offer any additional social value. I'm going to talk about social value in a moment because we use it a lot in terms of that language, in terms of the activity we're looking to be delivered as part of the fund, the hacked social value measuring, and this additional social value question. So I'm just going to clarify what we mean by that in a moment.
So that's the same for teams as well. It's got the same.
Okay. Applicant obligations. I think it's really important as market engagement to let you all know what we are looking for. And then you can think as an organisation whether that's something that you are happy to apply for and sign up to in terms of partnering with us here at the West of England Combined Authority. So all projects are required to carry out monitoring, reporting and evaluation activity as part of their projects. This includes collecting identifiable and sensitive data on participants, and it also means collecting baseline data at the start and some completion data. So it includes reporting on a monthly basis, and because of that data, it means that we will need to sign a data sharing agreement between us. Participants will need to use monitoring and evaluation processes. Sorry, that should say applicants will need to use monitoring and evaluation process set out by us at the Combined Authority. So we're thinking we'll want to work with you, but there will be some things that we will design in terms of how we want to monitor and how we want to evaluate, specifically how that information needs to come through to us. And that will include that hacked social value measures, which is something we are piloting on using parts of it. We're not fully embracing it. We're using the bits that we like, and we'll very much work with you to understand the bits that are most relevant to your project and what is an acceptable amount of data to collect with the types of participants you are working with. It'll also include creating case studies, probably attending meetings regularly, like stakeholder meetings where we can all get together and share some good practice and some of those key learning points. We do not expect applicants to have previous knowledge of using those hacked social value measures, not at all. However, what we do probably ask is that you have a look at that toolkit, and there's some guidance in a moment. I'll show you where that is, and have a bit of an understanding of what it is. But there is no previous experience, there's no training required, and there will be a lot of support from us as the West of England Combined Authority to start using some of those tools. Payment of grant funding will be in arrears on a quarterly basis, so that's something to keep in mind around this programme and whether that works for you as an organisation. And it does rely on submitting appropriate claims, so the right monitoring has to have been done and be in place at an acceptable standard for those claims to be paid. For medium and large projects, we would expect claims to be a minimum of 5k. And if they're below that, we would ask you as an organisation to hold off and claim those in the next quarter. So that's also something to be aware of. Obviously, we're not going to do that for those small grants, and we've got pre-existing agreement that's fine for those small projects that we are looking for. Applicants must be really clear in their bid how you're going to ensure 100% of participants are signposted onto that further skills employment opportunities, including volunteering. So just a top tip is just to be really clear throughout your application where that's happening in your activity, how that's happening and who you're partnering with. And applicants also need to be equally as clear on how you're going to ensure that 65% of participants progressing on to further skills and employment initiatives, including volunteering opportunities. So again, be clear who your partnerships are or who they might be, what that success looks like, and we are open. We know it's a high target to some innovative ideas around what is acceptable to accept as engagement in an existing employment and skills initiative or volunteering. And we need 70% of participants to have positive selected social value impact measures. Again, there's not a lot to tell you about that unless we really dug into the hacked social value measuring, but it's nothing to worry about, and it's something that we will work with you on. Applicants will be expected to support us in developing that digital badging. Just to be clear, it's something that we're piloting to support applicants with having that evidence and currency of their experience and their skills to take on to their next step. There will be no cost to you as organisations apart from working with us. You can help those participants collect the evidence, but we will issue them and we will work with you. We will expect medium and larger projects to have a little bit more involvement potentially on helping us to develop what those badges are, but for small projects there will be badges there ready made for you to choose from. Oh, I've gone back too far. Sorry, one moment. I'm having a bit of trouble with my links. Let's just go back a little bit. Okay, how are we doing for time? We're okay. Right, eligibility. So just to be clear, for delivery partners, the fund is open to community and voluntary sector, not-for-profit groups. We are looking for groups with a track record of achieving positive skills and employability outcomes. The fund is open to any community and voluntary group of any size, but we are looking for organisations that have either a base or you can provide evidence of previous delivery in the WECA geographical area. So when we are talking about the West of England Combined Authority region and the area, just to be really clear, we are talking about Bath and North East Somerset, Bristol or South Gloucestershire local authority areas. Unfortunately, we're not talking about North Somerset. And we need those delivery partners to be able to demonstrate links with local partners and that evidence of that local need. For participants, we're looking for participants benefiting from these projects. They must be residents within the region. So again, that's Bath and North East Somerset, Bristol or South Gloucestershire local authority areas. There's a very simple postcode check if you're worried about how you would ensure in reality that people are from the right region, and we can help you with that. We need participants to be aged 19 or over, we need participants to be attributed to a target group disproportionately affected by COVID. So there's more details about what those groups might be in the specification guidance, but just as an example, they are have been most disproportionately affected by COVID. So groups like women, specific ethnic minority groups, people with health issues or disabilities, over 50s, etc. But there's a more detailed list in the specification guidance. Okay, so just a few differences between the different size of grants for you to be aware of. And again, this table is in the specification guidance for you. So what we mean by small, medium and large projects. Grants are here. We do expect in your initial expression of interest to at least have an idea of exactly within that bracket you're looking for WECA to fund. That can change slightly if you are successful and going into stage 2, but we will expect you to have done some financial scoping so you can tell us how much you are looking to ask for. So in terms of match for small projects, that's not compulsory. We've negotiated that we can take that out. For medium-sized grants, match either financial or in kind, again, is not compulsory, but projects that can demonstrate an element of match will be assessed more favourably by the evaluation panel. Match for those large projects, and which we would expect to be multi-partner and cross-boundary, we would expect a match either financial in kind of 10%. So social value requirements we've already talked about. Now this is additional social value requirements, so don't get this confused with the social value that would be delivered through your activities. This is additional, so above and beyond what would be delivered by the fund you would be receiving from the West of England Combined Authority. So for large projects that's required, and we do leave it up to applicants. Again, you don't have to do this until stage 2. But we would leave it up to you to tell us the scale and the volume of what you would be delivering as a result of that. And for small and medium, it's not compulsory, but there is a score of up to 5% for that. So you will be scored lower if you don't offer any element of additional social value. And due diligence requirements, again, we've managed to negotiate them slightly different between the different size projects. So for small projects, we'll be looking for a credit search with a third-party credit reference agency, and we would expect you to complete the due diligence director's declaration form. For medium-sized projects, we would be looking at a credit search with a third-party credit reference agency. We would be looking that you could provide evidence for the last year, full filed accounts, and a due diligence director's declaration form. And for large projects, we'd be looking for exactly the same as medium, but with an independent audit report required at the end, which you can cost in the grant. That's an eligible cost which you can claim for in Financial Annex C if you get to that stage 2, but something to think about. Just to be really clear on that social value, we talk about social value in 3 areas of this project. So the hacked social value measures that we're hoping to use as part of the evaluation, social value activity, to those themes of the activity that we're looking for, and then additional social value. So that's above and beyond what is delivered in the programme. There is some guidance if you get through to stage 2. There is some guidance on what kind of social value we would like to see delivered. And just a key tip from me really is think about what you as an organisation are specialist in, and I wouldn't try and go outside of that. So if you are specialist in a particular area or targeting a specific group, I would stick to activity that is, of course, above and beyond your delivery, but what you can do around using that specialist expertise, rather than trying to spread yourself too thin on areas of social value where you would need additional help, or it just might not help you in meeting local needs in the best way, or you'd have to find additional expertise. So that's just a bit of a tip from me around those, not to get confused. We're using the word social value quite a lot in this application form. Okay, so I'm going to get into some of the details of exactly what we are looking to fund. Again, at the heart of it, we said this at the beginning, but it's an employability and skills initiative aimed at progressing those who are very much most vulnerable in our communities, most disproportionately affected by COVID, furthest from the workforce, and it's about supporting them to take the next step on that progression journey towards existing employability, skills and voluntary initiatives. So part of this is increasing the capacity of what's there already, but it's bridging the gap between those steps in progression that those individuals might need to take. We really want to make sure there's evidence here around why the groups chosen have been disproportionately affected by COVID. We know that's different on a local level in different communities, so we really want to see how that is different, or if you are a larger project who wants to address a similar issue cross-boundary, that evidence of how those challenges might be the same in several different local areas. This is about progressing people towards that existing employment and skills initiative. I think we've said that already. And for that reason, that is why those partnerships do need to be in place. There's only one voluntary and community sector group who can be the lead organisation, but that application form asks you for who are your consortia partners. For us, consortia partners mean partnerships where if they weren't there, the delivery couldn't happen, because they're absolutely key to that. So there might be subcontractor contracting arrangements with them, or wider partners. So they could be partners who you may have had a discussion, you might not have had a discussion, but you see they're going to be key to you in supporting that signposting progression target and that actual engagement and progression onto that further skills and employment. And we cannot be clear enough, we really want delivery partners to support us with the HACC social value measures that we're implementing and our pilot around digital badging. And we are looking for activities which support one or more of the following. So we want to address the impact of COVID on people, helping them to rebuild through new or improved life skills, access to advice, guidance and support, and gain the confidence to move closer and into employment. So we know that confidence issue is a huge need in local areas. It might be for slightly different reasons, but we know that gaining the confidence is a big part of some of the groups that we're looking at. Local voluntary community and non-for-profit organisation projects to help groups of vulnerable residents and communities across the west of England to recover, both economically and socially, from the COVID-19 pandemic. We are looking for activities which can support emotional and mental health well-being, that help foster social cohesion, and cohesion that will leave a legacy and impact on communities post-pandemic. So that might be really building on some of the assets that are in local communities and local areas. Reducing barriers to accessing pre-existing adult education available within communities, so really bridging that gap and making that link. And projects must demonstrate how they will support that progression pathway onto that adult education, which will thus in return result in improved skills and access to employment opportunities, with measurable outcomes and evidence being provided. We are looking for outreach projects or services, either face-to-face or online, which could tackle social exclusion. But rather than digital training courses, because we've already got quite significant provision of those, these would be projects or services that are likely to be specific, targeted and adapted, supporting those most vulnerable within our communities and addressing the impacts of social isolation, and promote the current digital entitlement offer. So that could either be through AEB, it could be through some of WECA's digital skills investment programme funded projects that's got digital skills at some of those lower and baseline levels. So this could be that pre-engagement activity feeding into that digital entitlement that we already have existing in our areas. And just an example, it could include rural communities where inclusion and engagement can be challenging. We know that's a specific challenge we have. And we're also looking at raising awareness of access to community and cultural activities which foster strong community links, cohesion and resilience. Projects will be linked and signposted to potentially other funding such as the Culture and Creative Fund. So that slide is just some of the specifics of things we might be looking for applicants to apply for, and applicants can look at delivering one or several areas of those. We probably wouldn't look at projects that wanted to deliver to every single one, so don't try and boil the ocean, but I think just picking 1, 2 or potentially even 3 of those areas and really drilling down on the target groups you're looking to deliver and what evidence there is that addressing that would be key in your local community would be really strong applications. Progression. I'm going to try and go through this one pretty quickly because I think I've been pretty strong on explaining some of these progression targets we're looking for. Just to be clear, around the 100% of participants being signposted towards that further employability and skills training, including volunteering, and for that 65 supported on to further employability or skills or training or education activity, again including volunteering. Both of those in your applications, please just make sure you're listing how you would evidence that. How would you know that had happened, and how would us as the funder know that that had definitely happened? So how would you be providing that evidence to us? And we've just put here some examples that we've thought about around that progression, especially for that 65%. So we think that would look like a participant moving on to engaging with local authority one front door services as an example. So we know they're called slightly different things potentially across our region, the different local authorities, but really linking in and evidencing how those participants have made a key link into some of those services. Various DWP funded activity could be the next progression step. Specific programs such as Restart delivered by CTEC, AEB funded training of all types. So this can be that first pre-engagement and that step onto some AEB funded training. Projects like NCS, Future Bright, or programs like Prince's Trust are just a few other examples. There's probably a lot, and you will learn a lot more, but we just wanted to give a few examples of some of the things that we thought we would just point out to you. Just to point out here as well, because I know that 65% progression target may seem fairly ambitious, but just to support you, we want to work with you to achieve these targets. Your targets are our targets as well, and that we need to report back on. So we would very much be looking at achieving these in partnership. And do set out in your application clearly and plainly as you can what activity will happen which will help you achieve those targets in your application. And again, just to support, that's why we're putting in place that digital badging pilot to support participants in understanding that next progression step. And that's why we're putting in place that hub and spoke delivery. So we have that approval for some further funding of staff to be out there working with you, supporting with the monitoring, supporting with making links and collaborations, taking good practice from one project and lifting and supporting you to embed it in yours. All of those great things we're testing and piloting that model locally through this programme. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just go through some of the questions. It's not actually all of them, but parts of question 1 and 2 with some top hints and tips from us in terms of what we are looking for in high scoring applications. So 1B will be what activities will take place as part of your programme. So you can see that's just 500 words. So all we're looking for there is you to paint a really clear, succinct picture of what your activity is, what you're hoping to deliver. If you've got partners involved, it might be nice for you, although you've probably just set them out earlier in there, what they're bringing. There'll be other places to add that in detail, but just at a high level, what they're bringing, why they're involved, where your activity is taking place. You could allude to why, but that's really going to come in the next question in terms of all of that evidence. So that is your, how can we visualise as an evaluation panel your project kind of summarised. That's what we want looking for in that top question. 1C, we want you to clearly define the target groups of participants for your programme. So this is where we're looking for that evidence. So justify why you've chosen that group particularly. How have they been disproportionately affected by COVID? And this evidence must go above and beyond what's in the specification guidance. There's a little bit of help for you there, but there's links to reports. If you go to our regional insights, especially that multiple indices of deprivation and the guidance there, there's more data for you. And if you will be experts with working with some of these target groups, so think about some of those wider places that you could get some of that evidence from. And don't forget, you can run kind of little round tables or focus groups and pull out some of that evidence that really backs up some of your data. It would be great to see in some of our high scoring applications that real mix of data, but those target groups or specialists in that area really confirming that those are the local challenges or the local assets that we should be building on as part of this programme. So outline how your programme will recruit your target group. So really we're also looking for in this programme to say that you understand those target groups' needs. So really make specific to us the elements of your programme, which might be the things it addresses, how it's designed, the ongoing signposting, your partnership links, how you are removing those barriers and making your activity inclusive for that specific target group. So that's what we'll be looking for there. 1D, this is around the content. I'm really sorry. I think somebody muted me and I'm not quite sure when you lost me. So I'm just going to start at the beginning of this slide and hopefully I wasn't muted on the slide before and I haven't been quiet for ages. So 1D, this is about describing the content of your program. So if it was me, I would just work through those bullet points and make sure my answer followed those answers. So who delivers those activities? How your activities will be delivered, where your activities will take place, and any timescales, how long they will last, when's the start and end, when will you start recruiting your participants and how. There is also a section for key milestones in question 5, but of course you won't need to fill that in until you've been, until you're successful in that stage 1, so don't worry about that too much. And really what we're looking for is here in the question about being clear and specific of what your initiative will look like, how your program will be structured, again, which elements of your program are removing those barriers for your target group and meet their specific needs. And be really clear where your partners, your key consortia partners or your wider partners are feeding into your program, if that is relevant. So that this is really the opportunity for that employment panel to be painted a picture, so we can almost, I'm an ex-teacher, so I'm thinking about a scheme of work, that kind of detail of exactly what's being delivered when, what's the point in it being delivered that way, by who, is there a specific way it's being delivered, which will help us understand why you've chosen that target group. Is the length of it designed to support that group, the time of day it's being delivered, the length of time, the number of engagements to support that specific target group. The more you can talk the evaluation panel, what you're delivering, why you're delivering it, be really clear who and how and when, that's really what we're looking for in here. And this is why if you want to, we could say put some tables, put some diagrams in to support if there's particular things that are happening more at the closer first few sessions of your engagement or the last few sessions for a specific reason, explain why that is and really pull that out for us. Again, I've just lost my cursor, 1 second. Okay. 1F, so this section is about describing how you'll support the transition of those who complete the activity towards further progressions within the skills, training, employment, including volunteering. We've just put again those targets there so you remember what they are. We won't let you forget them, what those progression targets are. And we really want you to address how is that transition going to take place. So it's probably not enough in this answer just to explain what is there for those participants to access, or what's there for them to progress onto, because we know these are really vulnerable groups, have been most disproportionately affected by COVID. They're going to probably need some additional support and help to access and be signposted on. So be really clear about how you're going to do that. Again, how you're removing barriers to those groups, making that next progression step. Be as clear as you can. It would be good to see relationships with partners that are predetermined, but if they're not, that doesn't matter. As long as it's really clear for your local area, that would be an obvious next step in terms of making those connections. So that's okay. It would be nice to see that there is ongoing support once that activity is completed. I don't think we would want to see programs that are standalone, really support a specific target group and then completely come to an end. So we would like to know kind of what ongoing aftercare, I suppose, is there for some time and how much time you think is appropriate beyond the delivery of your program. And it'd be nice to see answers that really thought about that digital badging that we want to pilot, and how you envisage that this could be used to support those progression outcomes in this activity. It doesn't mean that you're signing up to that happening. It'd just be really nice to hear your thoughts and maybe innovative ways that could be used, and how you'd be willing to work with us on the development of those digital badges. So don't worry in this one that if you put something around digital badging, you'll definitely definitely signed up to delivering that way. I think for that section, we're just looking for some ideas. Okay, 1G, we're looking for applicants to outline what makes your proposed training programme different. I shouldn't really put training programme there because, of course, it's social value activity. So apologies there in terms of don't get too worried that it has to be training. Of course, you want that skills and employment, signposting, progression, but that's not the main kind of point of that. So that's probably not the right word to have used here. Apologies. But we want to know here why your activity is different, unique and innovative from existing activity. We want to make sure it doesn't duplicate current offers that are in local areas that might rub up against or cause competition. We want you to explain how your proposal can complement and add value to what is there already and help to increase the capacity of the support that's already in your region. Now, where I think applicants usually fall down on this question is not pulling out what we've put in the specification guidance. So in that pink box on this slide, what I've done is just pulled out the wording that we have suggested what innovative projects might look like and how you could explain how your project is not duplicating what is already there. So I would suggest to applicants that you kind of go through these bullet points and see how much you can talk around your project idea. So for example, we think that innovation and something different, what is already available in your following area, could be around different defined groups of participants, the way that those participants are recruited compared to other activity, and the way in which that activity is delivered and designed to remove barriers specifically for that target group. So if that doesn't exist and your project is doing that, that could be one area where yours is not duplicating, it's adding value and it's actually different. You could talk about the wraparound care that supports participants at all stages in your programme. And ideally further skills and training or employment. So you could talk about there is existing provision that could be similar, but it might not have those other wraparound elements that remove those barriers, make it inclusive for the groups that you are looking at. It could be that the project and the purpose of the project is doing something entirely different in that area that doesn't already exist. There's an area of social value need that just is not being addressed in that local community and the services just aren't there. So it's very different. Or you could have activity that is just around different geographical reach or different target participants. You could have really innovative partnerships, so you're bringing very different partners together who haven't come together before, so deliver something quite new, unique. Just make sure there's really clear roles and responsibilities of what those different partners are delivering and what their responsibilities are, so that we can see that as a real new collaboration and consortium of partners working together. You could have something that embraces completely new methods of engaging with vulnerable groups, so completely different delivery design that doesn't exist. Or it's simple, so part of that could be a flexibility. So the way it's been designed is to completely attract a different type of audience and address a need in a particular group in the community. So do make sure that that is addressed, that is in the specification guidance, those bullet points. And I think we don't see enough in this question. It's not a unique question necessarily, it's put in a lot of our other applications, but high scoring applicants will be really clear and go through exactly around those areas, how their activity is not duplicating and how it is innovative. Okay, this is a bit long and I know it might be a little bit small on people's screens. So we're moving on to question 2. So this is the final question that you'll need to complete as part of the expression of interest form. I've just picked up one question in the side. You've not missed time frames or anything. I'm going to come to the detailed timeline in a moment. We're just going through the questions. This question is slightly different for medium and large projects compared to small projects. So just be aware those application forms are written slightly differently. So we've tried to slightly simplify it for smaller grant programs. And the one that's on the screen now, this is the one taken from the medium and large application forms. But in essence, they're pretty much the same. So the fund is looking for projects which will deliver the following outputs as a minimum. So the question then talks about those themes around social value that we're looking to address. So that increased social resilience and cohesion, increased health and well-being, increased financial inclusion and resilience, increased pride of place and environmental awareness. And we talk about that we want to incorporate those HAT social value measures as part of our monitoring and evaluation. And they come under some different themes. So the HAT social value measure toolkit talks about those in terms of employment, local environments, health, financial inclusion. There's some youth specific outcomes and there's some other social value outcomes that don't quite fit in any box. And they are set out as lists. It's simply a list of those types of outcomes on page 14 and 15 of this document that is called Measuring the Social Impact of Community Investment Guide to Using the Wellbeing Valuation Approach. And there's a link there to how you download that toolkit. It's not quite as simple as pressing the link. It does require you to give your name and your organisation and sign up to some of their licensing conditions because it is their tool. So you'll need to do that to access that document. But all we're asking you to do is have a look at some of those outcomes on page 14 and 15. As a tip, a lot of those outcomes have been pulled out in Annex A that is in the specification guidance. So we've put you a nice table that we would call the logic model. For you, we've called it our outcomes, objectives and benefits table for the fund. So that's another place to have a look at in terms of setting out what we think are some of those most relevant hacked social value outcomes that we would be looking to achieve. And all we're really asking you to do here is pick out a few of those that you think would be addressed through your activity. As a tip, I would say try it, because this is essentially an employment and skills programme, would pick out maybe one or a couple of those, and a few in those areas, those relevant areas of social value that you're delivering around either health and well-being or financial resilience or social resilience and cohesion. And what we want you to do in your answer is just pick those out and explain to us really clearly how your activity will address those outcomes. What is it about your activity in design, in content, in the partners that you're working with, and the way it's being delivered, in how it's being delivered, that will help those participants achieve those outcomes. So that's what we're looking for. In the medium to large project, it's set out as a table. We've made it a little bit simpler for smaller projects, and we simply want you to have a think around some of those themes and some of those and how they'll be achieved. So please don't feel you need to have to be an expert in the HAT social value measures. That's absolutely not what we're asking for. We're asking you to take a look, pull out a few relevant outcomes and explain to us how your project would meet those. So hopefully that's reassuring to some of you. What I've even done in the medium to large application form is take an imaginary project around supporting people with care and responsibilities with financial advice and budgeting activities, and I've just tried to fill in a couple examples for you. So again, if you're a small grant project and you just want to have a look at some of those examples that I've put in the large to medium project as a bit of a guide, have a look at those. They're in the application form. And I would really urge you to refer to that outputs, outcomes and benefits model that we've put in that Annex C of the specification guide. Okay, next steps, and then I've realised that I haven't pulled out the key timeline, which isn't helpful. So I will talk you through that in a moment. So next steps. Application paperwork can be found on the Combined Authorities Community Support Fund webpage. I will put a link to that in the chat after this conversation. Can't do both things at once, and I haven't got any support today, so I will put that link in after. The easiest way is to go into Google, put WECA Community Support Fund, and that will be the page. I think it is there now. Com's working on that as we were talking, on making sure that application paperwork is there and it's live. Other things you will find on that page is an FAQ document. So anything you've asked in the side, I will try and have a look at some of the questions, and if we have got a little bit of time, I'll see if there's anything I can answer. But as part of that open and fair application process, all answers to any questions that come through today or that come through on the Skills at West of England Combined Authority questions, they will appear on that FAQ document within a few days of you submitting that question. Just for that, on that point, if you ask a sort of panic question a couple of days before, I cannot promise that I can turn that round and get that to you in time. So please just be aware of that. If you can submit questions kind of as early on in the process, the better, and the more likely it is you'll have a good amount of time to think about that and respond in your application. The other thing to say is that expressions of interest, so that stage 1, is now open, and it closes midnight on Monday the 15th of November. So that is open for 3 weeks as of today. Again, a top tip, but we just want you to answer questions 1 and 2 as the expression of interest, but all the application questions are there, including all of the stage 2 documentation, so you can have a good read and a good understanding of, if you were successful at stage 1, what you would need to complete as a full application process if you were successful. What I'm going to attempt to do is just find the exact timeline for everybody, so just give me a moment. I haven't put it on a slide, which was silly of me, so what I will do is try and bring up the specification guidance now and just bring that up for everybody to have a look at on my screen. I don't want to be guessing dates and then getting them wrong. And I really urge everybody, there is much more detail in that specification guidance, so please don't rely on this market engagement event today as your complete kind of as completeness in terms of what we're looking for. It's quite a lengthy document, and we've tried to be really, really clear in there and set it out so you can come back to that wording again and again in there. So I am just finding this the full timeline for you, and I will bring it up on my other screen. Okay. Okay, so hopefully I'm sharing that. Would somebody just give me a thumbs up or say yes? Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'll try and make it a little bit bigger. So you'll see why I wanted to bring this up and just make sure you've got the full details. So today is Monday the 25th of October. We've launched. I'm hoping that application paperwork is on the website. Don't panic if it's not, just it will appear today for you. I will record this session. I'm recording it now. I've got the transcript as well if people want that. So you can just email me at skills@westofengland-ca.gov.uk. If you can remember to put Core 1 CSF application in your expression of interest submission, or your question, or your ask for anything to do with this programme, actually that would be very helpful because it means it comes straight forward to me. That expression of interest closes on Monday the 15th of November. That is strictly a deadline. If we if there are applications that come through half an hour later, 10 minutes later, that is a strict deadline, that midnight. So please just make sure it's in there. You don't want to be working on it that time of night anyway. We will then look at those applications, so that should be the 15th to the 6th of December. So that is an evaluation panel looking at those, scoring those. The reason we need that much time is to make sure that we get those right, because we're only allowing those successful ones to get through to that next stage, and we are expecting quite a high volume, so it's to make sure that we can do that. So we will let applicants know either way on that 6th of December. Please note that if you're unsuccessful at stage 1, because we are looking at those high volumes of applications, we will not be able to give feedback. We'll give a small amount of feedback to those successful. So if there are clarifications or things that we would like to see at stage 2, you can amend question 1 and 2 and your other answers to those questions if successful. We will then be looking at applicants completing that stage 2, so then that question 3 to 6 and the other parts of that application form, the financial annex and the due diligence, for Monday the 20th of December at midnight. We won't be doing too much with those applications until after Christmas, so we are looking for applications at those stage 2s to go through our internal monitoring, governance processes, ultimately to CEOs, between that 19th December and mid-February, because it has to work its way through all of that governance. We are then looking at mobilisation, grant offer agreements being in place around the end of February, with delivery taking place between then that end of February if we're quick, or beginning of March to December 2022. And then we would look for that final project evaluation, those final claims around activity to be made at the end of the year 2022. There is likely going to be another call for this. We made 80% of the funding available this time round, but there is a further 20%, and it does depend how much that's successful that gets around in this one. But we are looking at another funding round in April. The reason for that is we wanted to make sure that hub and spoke model was actually in place in terms of that regional outreach officer and monitoring support officer to maybe support with some smaller projects that felt they might not want to go through this process this time round, might want some extra support, might want some help in linking and partnering with existing programs and maybe offering kind of extra or additional activity as a result of those. So we have kept some back for that reason. And then that's a good point to just go on and say that next Monday, the 1st of November, if you go onto our Community Support Fund website, there is the link to sign up to our event, which is an open network event. All we are doing as the West of England Combined Authority is giving organisations a platform, either those who want to, who are applicants, who want to be lead applicants of applications for CSF, or just wider partners who feel they have something to give. That could be evidence and intelligence of local groups, or they feel that they would be one of those existing skills initiatives that these projects should link with. So you don't have to be an organisation who will be leading an application. You could be a wider partner, but we are offering that event. It will be an hour and a half. We'll see how long it takes, but we are literally offering people a 3-minute soapbox, and you can come on and you can explain who you are, what you're looking to do, the types of partnerships you're looking for, and then you can all share your details in the chat. So it's just a very kind of open way of facilitating some of those connections if you need them. You don't have to run a soapbox session, you can just listen in if you want to. Yeah, I will now just have a look through some of these questions. I'll be going from bottom up. So some of these ones that are more kind of personal to personal organisations, I'll pick up in the FAQs if that's okay. Will the fund allow for This is a good question. Recruitment time for any project staff within the 9-month delivery period. That really depends. You've got the timeline there in terms of when we are looking for projects to mobilise, so the end of February, beginning of March. There is space on that financial annex for staff time to tell us whether they are existing or they need to be recruited. We will take a sensible look at your programme delivery and have a look at whether that we think if you have got to recruit all new staff, whether that can be delivered before the end of December next year. I think it would be good if there was a mixture, but we know that might not be the case. So it's not a real yes or no answer in terms of if you're recruiting staff to deliver this initiative. I think it's just making sure that you set out and you also explain, you know, that might need to take place, but why you think that's doable in the timescales of the programme. We don't have an idea, Emma, of the number of projects we're looking to fund. It does say in the specification guidance that this time round, although we will look at everything that comes through, it would be good to see more medium to larger projects of things that are ready to go, because we haven't got that hub and spoke model yet in place to support some of those smaller groups. But that doesn't mean we are excluding small grant applications coming in this time round. We have made available 80% of our funding for this call, for this initial call, and we're looking around spring, April-ish time to make that next 20% funding available. That second funding round will still need to complete delivery by December 2022, so there'll be a shorter delivery window for that second fund, just to make that clear. Attendee list. I'm afraid I can't share with you an attendee list of today. What we can do if you're looking for partnerships and make connections is come on the one next Monday, where I'll really be, you know, encouraging people. They should be on that because they want to share their details and they want to offer something and talk to each other and look for partnerships. So that's really what I'm providing that platform for next Monday. Yes, I said there's going to be a call too, likely around spring next year, for that remaining 20%, and if we don't manage to allocate all the funding this time round as well. Let's just have a look at some of these others. Yeah, 15th of November is quite tight. Yes and no. We have a delivery period. This is part of our recovery funding. We have to make sure all evaluation, programme delivery, everything as a result of that current recovery fund was wrapped up before by the end of the year 2022, with final evaluation kind of January, February of 23. So, you know, we are constrained in terms of the timeline we have to deliver. It's 3 weeks. I think that is on par with other similar kind of application windows. So it is what it is in terms of that. And question 1 and 2 in terms of YAP 3,000 words, that's the max on there. So yes, it is, but if you can get your point across in less, then that's fine. There will be a recording of this session. It will be found on the Community Support Fund website, on the West of England Combined Authority web pages. It won't be available straight away because I have to then download it, get it to our comms team, and it does somewhat rely on their capacity to get it up on the website. But I am recording this so that people can miss it. And time frame, hopefully people have now seen. Digital badging. Somebody wanted a little bit more of a definition. There is a link in the specification guidance. That's actually the document that I've got up here with the timeline on right now. That's on the website. Digital badging. It's likely we are working with and talking to an organisation called Badge Nation, and there is a link in the specification guidance to their website. We are very much at the beginning of exploring how and what we want to achieve around this, but it's likely we will hold some sort of license with Badge Nation, and they will support us to develop several specific badges around these programs. I think it relies somewhat on the types of activities that we, with the projects that we initiate. That could be around the different themes of social value, like health, well-being, or a volunteering badge, or an environmental awareness badge. It does kind of rely on some of that, but Badge Nation can support us to make sure, first of all, it's quality controlled, and they help us to identify the right kind of skills and activities that mean, you know, that participant has to sort of show some evidence of developing something. They then get like it says, a digital kind of recognition. What we're hoping to do is that links to other things such as our talent retention platform, so that individuals could potentially have their own, they can have their CV there ready, they could have aptitude tests that they've done, and they could have their digital badges sitting there. We're also hoping to work with some of our partners, so we have had conversations, but nothing is set in stone. But you know, for example, CTech, that we might be able to develop a badge and have our partners say, yes, we will say, if you have this badge, we will recognise that as you are ready for our next programme and our next step. So we start to gain and build that kind of currency of those badges and the variety of badges that we deliver, if not working with partners so that they develop that next step of digital badge. So Unite creates step one of that social value badge. That organisation or skills initiative recognises that as that participant is ready to take the next step, and if they take the next step and take part in that initiative, they'll get the next stage of their badge. But it's all kind of open to exploration. What I have to be clear on, it won't be any cost to any organisation to be involved and take part in helping us to develop those digital badging. And if you are worried about kind of capacity on staff time, have a think about that in terms of your financial annex, just kind of supporting. But we want that to be proportionate to the different grant sizes as well. So may be obvious, but we probably would expect larger grant sizes to be a little bit more involved in helping us to develop those badges than we would the medium and the small grant sizes. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to answer any more questions on here, but I promise everybody, first of all, I'll have a little look through, check if I've missed anything key. If there's anything that's personal to you or just means I need a bit more time to kind of think about the answer to it, it will appear on the FAQ sheet. Again, keep an eye out for that. The FAQ will be updated regularly. I can't promise you it will be there exactly this afternoon or by lunchtime tomorrow, but it will appear there shortly, as will the recording. Keep an eye on the website. I'll have a little look now, but I'll put the link directly for you to in here of where that paperwork's going to be. Should be there now, if not definitely by the end of today, in terms of the application paperwork. If you have any questions at all, I'll just go back to that final slide. Do just email me at skills@westofengland-ca.gov.uk. So I'm Nicola Woolworth, and if you can remember to add CSF Call 1 application, that will get straight through to me. And just to say, hope to see many of you next Monday at that open application event. The details of that again are on the website. That is there and available now for you to sign up to. Best of luck with applications. You've got those contacts for questions. I think that's everything, and very best of luck. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Many thanks. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Nicola. Much appreciated.
Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you.